Hello, everyone. My name's Chris, and welcome to Music, Magic, and Madness, which is a brand new podcast. And I've been thinking about it for quite some time, and I'm really excited to launch it today. So, this first episode, I'm going to basically share about a few things, three things. So the first is why Music, Magic and Madness? Why have I called this podcast that? And secondly, I'm going to introduce myself a bit. I'm going to share a bit about my journey, and it'll be in the context of those three words. And the third thing is I'm going to talk a bit about what's to come in this podcast. And so I'm excited to get into all of that with all of you. And so starting with the first part of the episode, why Music, Magic and Madness? And by the way, I'll kind of blend the first and the second two together. And in other words, it'll become clear why I've called it Music, Magic and Madness as I share a bit about my journey, and then I'll talk about what's to come in this podcast in future episodes. And just briefly on that note, it's going to be a combination of, me sharing more about my experiences, but also having some conversations with other people as well, and hearing about their experiences as well, particularly in these areas that I've mentioned. Really, really excited in general, so coming back to why Music, Magic and Madness, and also just sharing a bit about my journey with all of that. And I might start with the music side of things, and I'll probably jump around a little bit between all of those three basic concepts. And I suppose also with magic, I could have called that the lightness of my journey and the inspiration of my journey. And with the madness side of things, I could have called that the darkness of my journey and the confusion of my journey and things like that. So it's a nice title, I guess, Music, Magic, Madness. And I think when those three words arrived for me, they haven't really left me. And I've had this idea of starting this podcast, and we'll see how it goes. Hopefully we'll get somewhere with it. So my musical journey is an interesting one, I guess. If I reflect on it, it's my early memories of music, and the way it sort of meant something to me, the way it touched me. I'm thinking about some of the music I was introduced to in my family home, everything from the Beatles to the Doors to the Beach Boys to Elvis, and a lot of that 60s, 70s stuff. And it's still to this day been a real influence for me. Not just musically, but I would say, and I know this word gets thrown around a lot, but spiritually speaking, I guess it impacts me on a sort of a level that I can't really put into words fully. I think it helps me come home, and I often have been referred to as an old soul, and perhaps I've kind of adopted that concept and referred to myself that way too. And what I mean by that is often I'm drawn to periods of time that were before my current lifetime, and like the 60s and the 70s. And and the early 80s too. And I I guess I'm drawn to a lot of music from those time periods, and I'm drawn to various things about those time periods, and I also feel like that music is still very alive in me, and I have really had a lot of joy being able to learn some of that music as a musician, and perform it, and I guess keep that music alive in my own way. And I've also enjoyed listening to it from time to time. Um, and yeah, I still really enjoy that music from those time periods. Not all of the music from that time, but I seem to be drawn to those decades in particular. So that's, other than that, I might jump over to sort of the magic and the madness side of things. Uh, so yeah, I think the spiritual path is really important, and finding a vehicle for enabling or allowing expression and allowing connection, and music has been a big part of that for me. And often, the words coming home come to mind, that when I am feeling lost, music helps me come home again, in ways that perhaps I can't fully see. And I might just get an urge to put on a certain playlist on Spotify, and it'll help me sort of come into the moment, and just start to feel into where I am. And I guess that brings me over to the madness side of things, which is, I guess, a battle with overthinking, with various mental health challenges, ranging from anxiety to sort of, which I think is sort of like an agitation and a really a discomfort about something in the future, and that may or may not happen, or and then a depression. I've been through stages where I'm really struggling to feel the aliveness inside of me, to feel my life force energy, and to feel motivated, and to get myself going, to get myself moving, to get myself excited, or just even taking steps. And there's some interesting, I guess, topics that would relate to mental health challenges, and they vary, or they include, I should say, things like addictions, things like trauma, and also I think just the nature of the music industry. I feel like it's definitely been speaking to me, calling out to me, and it's sort of like a Mount Everest. I look at it like a Mount Everest, and it's been easy to fall into the trap of, like, because I've enjoyed so much music from those decades ago, thinking I need to go and sort of recreate that kind of lifestyle, or that kind of experience that maybe some of my musical heroes have had, that I need to go on tour, or I need to get a record deal, or I need to be in a certain kind of band. And that has, I think, been both a driving force for me and also a double-edged sword, like a place of creating confusion, or creating suffering. And the nature of the music industry is, it is a beast of an industry. It can be amazing, and it can also be very harsh. It can be very challenging. It can be ruthless. It can feel very abundant sometimes, and it can feel very scarce at times. And it's not for the faint of heart. And I think maybe on the matters of the heart, I think the reason I keep going back to it is I I want to rediscover, or I want to fully come into my heart. And I think music is another vehicle for that. And of course, live music almost amplifies the power of that, and the power of that discovery, and the power of that, what is residing in my heart, or what wants to come through my heart, and having a space to see what's there and to share what's there, and to do that through the power of music, and being open to listening, being open to listening to myself, to listening to what's happening in the room. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity in music and the music industry, and it can be it has felt everything from confronting to exciting to amazing to very challenging, and sort of everything in between. And yeah, I'm looking forward to, I suppose, sharing about my experiences more, and hopefully that will connect to some of you. And whether you're a music fan, whether you're a musician yourself, whether you're starting out as a musician, whether you've been doing it for a while, hopefully this podcast connects or resonates with you in some way. And also, even if you just appreciate music in some way, maybe just listening, just putting on some songs at home and listening, or driving to work and listening to your favorite music, and you've developed a relationship with music. And also I'm interested in just that, what is your relationship to music and magic and madness, and how do those three interact, those three ideas or concepts? How do they play out in your life? So I definitely look forward to sharing more about my journey. And I also, as I mentioned, I would talk a bit about what's still to come in this podcast series. And basically, I'll just jump into that now. I'm going to be having some conversations with some people in my life, and some of them I'll know quite well. Some of them perhaps I'm just getting to know, and I hope that this podcast will be a conduit for us to continue to get to know each other, but also to create some connection, I guess out there, with you guys and whoever's happens to be tuning in, whoever happens to be interested, whoever is interested in this, what this is about, in any size, shape or form. If there's anything that's been discussed that you're curious about, or if there's anything that's been discussed that you'd like to share a bit about, I want to create some availability to be able to receive your feedback and your comments and your questions. And then, of course, that will feed into where the podcast goes as well. So this is sort of a living, breathing thing that I'm just getting started with. I have a bit of a vision with it, and I'm also very much diving in and just making it up as I go. And I think the other thing I'll say on that is, I guess I want it to be a reflection of my truth in the moment, and what I'm picking up on in my own self, and what I'm also picking up on around me with the people in my life, and hopefully this podcast will connect me to more people, and that will feed that whole conversation. So yeah, really excited to just open up the doors with this and get it started. And it's something, I'd say, getting started can be a challenge, and I'm no stranger to that as well. And I know when I've been thinking about something for for a long time, or even for a few days or a week, like there's probably a reason that it's calling to me, or it needs some attention from me. And I think this has been one of those things. I've just had this nagging thought about, you've got to start doing this podcast and stop dragging your feet. And so here I am. So I think I'll wrap it up in a minute. And I just want to basically introduce myself and give a bit of an idea of a bit about my journey, and that, it's been a complex one, I would say. And I'm sure that, maybe you can relate to that. Maybe you've had a complex journey with music, or with the magic that you feel is alive in you, or is a gift that you have, and then perhaps the madness, the challenges you face currently, or you have faced, and where you're at with those challenges, and how these three concepts interplay, and how they affect each other, and how they help each other, and perhaps sometimes how they conflict a bit. And I know, for example, I know I've had opportunities to get out there a lot and play a lot of live music, and I have stepped into that at times, and I've also had times when I haven't felt ready to step into that, or I haven't felt up to it in some way. And I also know that sometimes when I do live shows, it's easy to enjoy it, and other times it's not as easy to enjoy it. And there's so many variables. And I think I have chatted about this with other musicians and friends, and there's so many variables to, say, a live music performance. There's like how many people are going to be there, and that will affect how the music happens, and how, who is going to be there, and also, even things like the room, and the acoustics in the room, and the equipment that we're using, and how that sounds in the room, and how we can adjust the equipment to make it sound better or worse, and it goes on and on and on, and all of that can really change the emotional state of the performer and the audience. And so there's so much potency in a live music scenario, and there's a lot of I think there's a lot to talk about with that. And I think we're in an exciting time, with, despite all the challenges with the music industry, and which we can also talk about more in future episodes. But despite all of that, we are in an exciting time with music and live music, and I think I'm seeing a lot of polarities. I think I'm seeing that, there's a lot of diversity and polarity in, like, there's some really huge artists that are massively popular, and then there's so many, I guess, burgeoning artists that perhaps are struggling in some way to connect and to find their audience, and really deliver to their audience, and really tap into their potential, and perhaps also there's this polarity where you've got, I feel, a lot of music that follows somewhat of a template, and is perhaps very stylistically, I'm going to sound judgmental, but some music is very stylistically narrow, and then other music is perhaps wider stylistically, and less easy to put in a box. And of course there's pros and cons to both those kinds of music. I guess on one hand you want to make music accessible, and on the other hand you want music to be a true reflection of your soul, or your story, or your truth. And finding a way to be yourself through both live music performance and recording music and writing music, and finding your own place, finding your own path, and also finding your own tribe. And I think all of those things are really exciting concepts. I feel like I'm sort of, in the middle of all that journey, with all that, and I'm a work in progress, and I'm continuing to learn about what it is I want, where I want to go, and what challenges are happening at the moment for me, and also what possible solutions or inspirations can I act upon to move myself forward. So once again, really, really happy to get this podcast underway and just share a bit about where I'm at and some of my reflections on my journey, and also some of my ideas about where things might be going. And I know I've touched on a lot of areas, and I'm looking forward to expanding on those, and really seeing where we go with this podcast. So that'll do it for today, and I will be back soon with more. And in the meantime, feel free to touch base, and if there's anything you would love to hear about in this podcast, like, what does it mean, music, magic, and madness? What comes up for you, or what are your questions even that you might have? And I'll do my best to take all that on board as I move forward with this. And so reach out. I'll put some information in the description, and that will help you know how to reach out. And I look forward to connecting with you, and anyone who's tuning in and would like to connect more. I'm excited where things go, and we'll see you on the next episode.